Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got a combination that should give us a really good looking pattern. We've tested these shells through a bunch of different constrictions, and I think we might have narrowed it down to where this choke we've got here today might be the absolute ticket for what these shells want. That's the hope anyway. We just got to test it and see what happens. But as for the shells we've got out here today, it's some that Jack sent us. So big thank you to him for sending some of these over because they've been some excellent shells so far. But we've brought out some more of the Kent TK7 Penetrator shells. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 1 5/8 ounce payload of number 7s, going about 1100 feet per second. And although these are not the full-on 18 grams per cc of TSS, they are the little bit heavier than lead 15 grams per cc kind of mixture. So a little bit like heavy shot. Either way, they should be hitting with a pretty good amount of energy, and with how these things have been patterning so far, they've definitely been pretty impressive, that's for sure. So hopefully today, I think we might have found the ticket to what they're going to like and give us the hottest pattern that they can. And as for the setup we've got here today, I brought out the Remington 1187 here, but with this choke. This is a Remington TSS Turkey 650 constriction choke, and it has done very well with a number of loads we've put through it so far. But I think, based on our testing, 650 is probably going to be the ticket for what these shells want. We've ran them through a 665, I believe, then a 655, then a 640. The 640 was a little bit too tight, but we did see improvements all the way down to 655. So this 650 hopefully is going to be about what constriction they really want to run at. But as for the test today, everything is the same as usual. The turkey paper's at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity. So we'll get you guys to view the target, take the shot, look at the chrono, and then go look at our results. I absolutely have some high hopes for this combination. It should give us a really good looking pattern one way or the other. It's just, is the 650 the perfect constriction for these shells or not? I don't know yet, but let's head over here and take the shot and just see what kind of a pattern they're actually able to give us. Alright, so that shell gave us 1132 through the chrono. The box claims 1100, so yeah, I'd say we're right about where we should be. And I think 1132 is a pretty good velocity for what I'd like to see these shells moving at. So definitely looking pretty good up here, but how does our pattern actually look down there? Let's head down to the target and just see what we were able to get. Alright, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Unfortunately, we were a touch left. I don't think it was me. It was probably just the shell and choke combination, but either way, I still think we can see what we need to see here, obviously, and what we see is a really good looking pattern. Now, before anything else, believe it or not, if you haven't seen the other tests we've done with these shells, I think this might be the least hot or least condensed pattern we've seen out of these shells. Typically, if we have it centered up, all but just a handful of pellets are within the turkey paper, and this gives you a little bit more leeway either direction. So for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the 650 constriction or that particular Remington choke in general, this gave us the most open pattern we've seen with these, but I don't necessarily hate it either. I kind of like this pattern. It's nice and hot in the core area here with really no voids or anything through that entire area. It still gives you a decent amount of leeway as compared to what we had previously seen out of these shells. Typically, you are legitimately shooting like basketballs or smaller at them at 40 yards with these. So I do like that it gives you a little bit more leeway while still being more than good enough and hot enough in the core to get you that bird. Outside of that, we do see a couple of flyers, which is not unusual for these shells, but it might be 2 or 3 more flyers than normal. But for a core area like that, I'm not really too worried about it, and I think this is probably my favorite or my preferred pattern that we've gotten out of these shells. Is the 650 constriction the perfect constriction for these? If you're going for the absolute hottest core possible, I don't know that it is, but I think that it probably will give you the most even, balanced pattern all the way through, because we really don't see any splotchiness in it until we get just on the very outskirt edges of the main pattern. So I really like the way that looks. It might not be as hot as a like Herder's TSS shell through that choke would have been, or these shells would have been through another different choke we've tested, but I think that is pretty close to a perfect hunting pattern. Now I'm curious, if we threw in a much more open choke, like a 675 or something, what would happen? I've got one more of those shells left, so I think that would be a pretty interesting test to see how they like a lot more open chokes as well. So as for this test, might not be the tightest we've seen out of these shells, but I think it's my preferred pattern we've seen. I think it's the most evenly spread out through the entire thing. Plus it gives you a little touch more leeway one way or the other, which I like to have. And clearly that's a good enough 50-yard pattern, maybe even 55 yards. I think you would run out of energy before you'd run out of pattern. So thumbs up from me here. And once again, these TK7s show that they seem to be a pretty good shell. Alright, and here's the wad from that shell, and as you can see, it does look different than a normal wad. I forget the exact name of it, but it is some kind of a low bore contact wad, and clearly, I think it works. I'm surprised more companies in turkey shells don't actually use these, because they seem to do pretty well. Either way, this might actually be the roughest we've seen one of these wads. Typically, they come out of those tight chokes looking pretty well perfect, but there's nothing stuck down in there. We did have one petal kind of open a little farther than the others, but not a big deal. Still though, for going through a ported 650 choke with number 7s, that's not bad looking whatsoever. So I still think that it did pretty well exactly what it was supposed to do for us today. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? Definitely impressive. There's no question about that. That would absolutely crush a bird at 40 yards and 50 yards as well. Like I said a second ago, you would run out of energy before you would actually run out of pattern. So definitely looking pretty good here. And that is probably my favorite pattern we've seen out of these shells. It might have a couple more flyers around the edges than some of the other chokes we've ran with it, but I really like that core area and how nice and circular and even it is throughout the entire thing. I'd have no problem at all taking that combination out turkey hunting, that's for sure. But as always, leave your thoughts about it in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? If you've been following along with how these have performed with different chokes, did you think 650 was going to be the perfect constriction? Or do you think that that is kind of the perfect constriction for those shells? And is there another choke you want to see me shoot that last round I have through? I was thinking a little bit more of an open choke to see what would happen, but I don't know. If there's something you guys want to see, then by all means let me know. But leave all that stuff down in the comments, because I'm definitely excited to see what your opinions are about it. But as for today's test, can't argue with that kind of a result. That is more than good enough for a turkey pattern at 40 yards. There's no question about that. But with that being said, I've got plenty more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.